definitely had its effect and took its toll on my life and on the decisions that I made. So as a young girl, there was always this complex there, constantly battling and suffering in silence. Sadly, as an adult, I experienced acquaintance rape, and the cycle continued. I didn't speak up. I didn't say anything initially. I actually decided that I was going to kick in a defense mechanism that I thought would keep me from experiencing any more hurt or any more trauma. Initially, I was in denial. Like, no, this is not happening. Absolutely not. And I wanted to fix it. I wanted to do whatever I thought was necessary in order to rename it so that I could regain control. And then continue in denial. And that's exactly what I did. I remember the day I literally went home to take a shower so that I could feel clean. And that was also my way of saying, I am washing this off with me, sweeping it under the carpet, and I'm going to move on as if it never happened. I was convinced that that would be my new truth, that it was just sex. I will be okay. I've been through some things, and I'll be just fine. Well, so many weeks later, I was experiencing sickness. So in addition to battling and struggling, and I say suffering in silence, in addition to that, I became sick. And I never forget, at that time I went to my mom, and Mom, I'm not feeling well. And she says to me, she suggests I call the advice nurse. And I did. I was 24 at the time, so I was calling the advice nurse, giving her my symptoms, letting her know that I wasn't feeling good. And I'll never forget her question, and it was the turnaround for everything that I had been trying to silently battle. She asked, "Ma'am, pretty much based on your symptoms, you either have a cold, the stomach flu, or you're pregnant." And her question was, "When was the last time you had intercourse?" And at that moment, I became numb. I immediately remembered the day. I was taken back to that day, that time, that place of being sexually violated. And I mumbled, I said no. And it was so faint. And I was literally traumatized all over again. And letting this nurse know that I said no, that's all that could come out at that time. And nurses being mandated reporters, she immediately had the police on the line, and the police were at my home within minutes. And at that time, I had to tell my family what had occurred about a month prior. Can you imagine, like, everything I tried to deny and forget about became like a reality right there in front of my face, having to just talk about it right there and then. And it was very traumatic. At that time, the police wanted to take the report right there, and I agreed. I didn't want my parents to feel like awkward or isolated with this experience, so I allowed my parents to be there, and it was tough. Probably not, I look back, not the wisest decision. It was very difficult giving that police report there, but I did the best I could at that time. And that night, we went to the hospital, and it was confirmed that I was pregnant, and my world fell apart. I could not believe that not only am I having to deal with the fact that I was raped and all of the aftermath that comes with that, now I'm pregnant. Oh my goodness. And so I just literally felt like a bomb blew up in my face. And so my family, they showed so much support. I'm forever grateful for them just standing by my side in the midst of the emotional pain and turmoil. But even in that, I still had to, walk it out. I had to walk it out. I had to make decisions and figure out my next step. Initially, I didn't want to press charges. I wanted to truly, okay, that part was done. Now I just want to move on. I just want to wake up tomorrow and have everything back to normal. And that didn't happen. I had to go through the steps and process every aspect, every area of this experience. And initially, again, I didn't want to press charges. Initially, I didn't want to sit and talk to a therapist either. I really felt like no good could come out of talking to a therapist. What am I going to do? Just sit and tell her what happened all over again? Why? What's the point? And I remember sitting in the waiting room, and I told my sister who had driven me there, take me home. I do not want to sit here and just tell her my story all over again. So she did. She took me home. But when I got home, my mom said, you need to talk about this. You don't want to keep this inside. Talk about it, or else it will haunt you for the rest of your life. And I thought, wow, that's deep. I definitely don't want that to, be the case. And so I did. I went back. I made an appointment, and I went back to that therapist, and I began talking. I also received support from a rape crisis counselor. And those were my first steps to opening up and being transparent, to listen, to talk, and to release what I was feeling. I still had a pregnancy that I needed to deal with and figure out what I was going to do with this child developing in my womb. There were days where I felt that I could keep her, be the best mom ever. And then I had days where I thought, no way. There's absolutely no way that I can go forward and move forward with this pregnancy. I remember doing a lot of research and Googling and talking and reading and figuring out, what are my options? What can I do? What should I do? Can somebody just tell me what to do? And then one day I decided, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to have an abortion. And I talked to my family, and I shared that with them. And my dad, he says, Shante, we're here for you. You know that. And we respect whatever decisions you make. And I also want to know if you would consider either giving the child for adoption or maybe raising the child. It's just something, what you consider. And maybe one day you can be an example for another young lady. Maybe one day you can inspire another young lady who may find herself in a similar position. And I thought about it. I thought, okay, I'll give it some thought. I'll consider. And after doing just that, I had made my final decision, and then it came one day at work. I'm working in a cubicle, and it was a light bulb moment. And I thought, this child is going to be adopted. Yeah, this child will be adopted. And so as I continued through my healing process, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I did actually end up placing the child for adoption. And interesting enough, she was born early. And that kind of threw off the plans that we had put into place. But it actually also gave me an opportunity to solidify my decision. In the most amazing way, I was able to love this child. And I always say that she taught me something special about love. She taught me how to love in spite of the surrounding circumstances. And during the time that she was in the intensive care nursery, I was able to pump milk so she would receive those nutrients. I had an extended stay at the hospital. They were all aware of my situation. And I actually had the time to talk to her, to pray to her, and again solidify that I knew that I was doing the right thing for me and the right thing for her. As I continued through my healing process, I remember when I literally just had to make a solid decision that I didn't want to stay in a dark place. As time went by, there was actually a young lady who came forward and shared that she had a similar situation with this individual. And as you can imagine, that angered me. I was very frustrated. As I mentioned initially, I didn't want to press charges, but when I received that information, I thought, this person needs to go down. And so I called my detective and I said, I would like to meet with you, give you another statement, a full statement, including information I wasn't comfortable sharing, in front of my parents, but I do want to press charges. I want to move forward. And that in and of itself was another heavy experience. You know, it was a lot of ways intimidating. It was difficult, but I knew that that was something I wanted to do. In spite of being pregnant, that wasn't considered evidence. And my detective explained that the best thing I had going for me was to make a phone call at the police station in order for this individual to incriminate himself. And I thought about that and I realized, well, let's do it. If that's all I have working in my favor, then I'll do it. And I'll never forget making that phone call. I was extremely nervous sitting there at the police station. Had a dear friend right there with me to show her support. And I picked up that phone and I made that call and I asked police appointed questions. And in a very interesting way, he explained his perspective of the encounter. Number one, he acknowledged what happened. He acknowledged that there was a fight, as he described it. And yeah, I remember you pushing me and saying no, but I don't know what came over me. And then he said, but I didn't mean to hurt you. And here's the thing, whether he meant to or not, hurt was done and the damage was done. And I still had to navigate through that healing process. Long story short, when the detective felt like there was enough information gathered that I could end the call and, you know, the case was processed and he had his opportunity to share, to have his own interview. At the end of the day, the DA actually rejected the case. And that was heartbreaking because I knew what he did. He knew what he did. But in the court of law, there are just a lot of other components that have to be considered. And I remember feeling let down, abandoned, you know, and just very discouraged by the outcome. But I also knew that I could not stay stuck in that place of pain or frustration or anger or disappointment because of the outcome of the court system. I knew that I had to move on in my healing process if I truly wanted to enjoy life, and I did. I felt like I had suffered long enough. I felt like I had been in a dark cave for long enough, and I didn't want to remain in that place. And so even in the midst of being very hurt and disappointed, I had to lift my shoulders, raise my head, and continue to move forward in my life. I was told that I could file a civil suit, and I didn't want to go that route. I was also encouraged to have parental rights relinquished, and that was difficult in and of itself to even take that step, but for the safety of the child, I did go ahead and proceed with that. And I also received compensation through the Victim Witness Compensation Program. There's a setup in which if you want to relocate, you can, if it's based off of safety concerns, your safety, your well-being, your physical well-being, or your mental and emotional well-being. And for me, it was more mentally and emotional reasons. And so I did relocate. And